So let me show just this very briefly about a code, okay? So when we look at, like right now, we're speaking English, right? So when decoding things, we'll probably decode them first, even mentally from English, and then start going into other languages, right? Mm-hmm. But how will we know, just like they talk about, they have the Rosetta Stone, and that's what taught them, what Kemetan or Egyptian hieroglyphs were saying, right? But what would be like our Rosetta Stone to like understanding this occult knowledge, especially if the languages that predominantly this was written about is not even language that we're using today, like Latin and Greek, okay? Mm-hmm. And it sums up to that speaking was not like the primary thing, like in the ancient times from an occult level. Like talking about something was like the last and almost even the lowest level in many ways of the manifestation, because the mouth is in itself a womb, so it's going to birth things into this reality. So many things are just intoned and kept into the inner world. So when the external languages were developed, which also obey rules, okay, because they have to run just like a car needs to run. If you deliver a broken language, the people will be broken. If you remove certain components from a language, then the language won't work. Like the people won't work. They'll go psycho for real, okay? So languages have a coding system within them, and this coding system really does harken back to what I was showing you with the stars and the powers of the stars. But then it has to be broken up into multiple pieces of the alphabet. And then they need to be able to be able to call different parts of the world and then be able to be put back together, right? So with a language, let's say if I move from English into Latin and then Latin into Greek and then Greek into Kemetan and then Kemetan into, let's say, Tamil, and then you see what I mean? Let's say I was moving through those languages. What would I really be looking for rather than sitting down and trying to learn all these languages? What I would be looking for is their roots, okay? Like I explained earlier. Mm-hmm. And so it turns out that what the Sator square is, which I'm showing here on the screen, is the roots to a language system. This can be laid over English, and it will produce perfect numbers and bring forth the code within English. And it can be laid over Latin, and it can be laid over Greek, okay? But let's talk about what does it do? What is it doing? Once you lay it over these languages, what it does is it points out the words of power. Each of these letters correspond also to a number. And then it also then lets you understand how to navigate that program, because languages are actual spaces in time. So meaning like languages create realities, right? Let me just show this real quick. We can, we'll just dive through this only and just make sure that there's a complete understanding of this. I just want to pull up this chart real briefly. There it is. It's here. Because it's vital to what we're talking about right now. And it's just that they have discovered that language resides in a specific part of your brain, right? So the brain is like a map, like of a region of different worlds and realities. It's just a physical impression of that. But down in this area that they're showing you on the bottom left, this is what is called the language region of the brain. So they found out that everybody stores language right here on the left hemisphere of the brain. So with that being said, then that languages are indeed worlds. And if you ever wanted to know how to navigate through a world, forwards, backwards, spiral, inside out, as a pentagon, as a hexagon, as a grid, because those are all the directions of a world. You see what I mean? So when they say, hey, we're going back in time, time is not like a linear thing. Like we're going to go back, just turn around and walk backwards. That's not, we may have to spiral down. We may have to move in what would be called a mysterious way. And so for that to be kind of like coded in, you know what I mean, and be replete, because that's what magic is. Once you know these points, you know how to call forth the points. So you know how to call for the powers. Okay, so, and when I say powers, again, it's so easy for a person to just jump right out and try to find the God, right, that they're going to worship. And the reality here is like within the code that is encoded within this one I'm showing you on the screen. Now, first of all, the center is the N. Okay. And as you see, the N only occurs one time in the whole sequence, but holds everything together, right? Just like if I say, hey, how's all this held together? You'd be like, it's inside, like the center of us, as deep as you could really go, you would get to the spindle, as I call it. And that would be holding everything together. And then all of this on the outside, because you can keep seeing it say open, you can see it say many other things. This is just the sequence of how things unfold. Now, it turns out that this is actually the same as the I Ching, that you can drop this right over. You can take the numbers from this, which, I have available on the Discord. It's no secrets. But you could take the numbers from this and find out that the N equals 64, the number 64. And that all of these matrices such as the I Ching, which is 64 hexagrams, we have the chessboard, which is 64. We have the DNA codons, which is 64, right? So we find that these 64-bit realities, as I'm calling them, actually move on specific codes. And these codes are energies, and this is what the energies do. And I have to read you this thing really quickly because it will let you know just about the power that we're talking about here. And what this would be is the first time that the Sator square was decoded, okay? Because they have one saying is say the farmer holds the plow, the worker the wheels, right? This is like if you tried to put this into words, that's what it says. That's what it would say. Oh my goodness. The farmer holds the plow, the worker the wheels. Okay. And some have been able to derive enlightenment just from those statements, right? However, sometimes you need a further breakdown of what we're talking about. So here's what this says decoded. And I had to use Sybil LLM to decode it because some of these words are actually in other languages that are not so apparent. So you have to pick it up. It's like, oh, that's in Greek. Oh, that's in Latin. But this is what it says. And we're talking about you. In the beginning, a mighty and eternal power was invoked, recognized simply as being, sacred and holy in its essence. This power, known by its ineffable name, because remember, if it can be named, it can be controlled. So it doesn't not only give away its name, it doesn't operate by a name. It operates as a being. Just call me being. Okay. This power, known by its ineffable name, initiated the process of creation as the ultimate originator with an agent or mediator enacting its will. Okay. It doesn't say his will. It says its will. So what it's referring to specifically is that even when we're talking about something above, what we're talking about is the higher, I call it the higher self. It's us completely collected, completely aware of what we are. When we operate also in this reality, because we have vehicles in this reality, and we have vehicles all across the spectrum. You have an X-ray vehicle, you have an infrared vehicle. Those are the mediators, if you may. So that story of Jesus Christ, which, we'll break down a little bit earlier, which is really Venus, a little bit in a minute, but that story of Jesus Christ is really central to the person in this way. But that the person is actually operating in the position of a Messiah or the mediator carrying out the will of their higher self, okay? And it's going to go on. It says, holding control over all, okay? When's the last time you've been in that state? But you're always actually in control if you can upload yourself back to your higher self, right? But it says, holding control over all, this power governed the cycles and mechanisms of existence through deliberate actions and efforts. What this means is that to control your space and time, your future and your past, it must be done deliberately. It's not like oh, wow, we just got to this. And that's why even when you're looking at the system of drawing down the powers of the stars, it's a very deliberate system. It's for you to craft your next day, your tomorrow, your 3 months, your infinite. You see what I mean? Like, how many people get up and actually use a system that is moving the pieces around to how their world is about to be put together in a few days? Okay. So that's moving with actions and efforts, right? Because this is, it's not that easy to do, because you got to stay reminded. You got to remember, you got to synchronize yourself to nature. You got to know what each of these components are. You're an alchemist, so you're mixing different formulas together. And sometimes these formulas blow up in your face, and that's a part of the learning process, right? But it's with actions and efforts. So this goes on. It says, along this journey, there was a need for withdrawal and contemplations as burdens and responsibilities were carried forward. And again, what this is referring to, again, is that some may see supreme as never taking a rest, never not knowing anything, never, but, these are all misconceptions, because we're talking about reflections. And most importantly, we're talking about your reflection and the one that's central to you. So you're going to go through this process, and there will be a time, if you're not already in it right now, where you'll withdraw from the work, like meaning stop even working with your powers, and then contemplate, because the burdens and the responsibilities are in front of you. So this means, like, when you have kids, right? Or you start a business, right? This is all still light matters, but this is the best way that I can explain it to you. You start creating things and be like, wait, should I even keep going in this creation now that I know the power of what I'm creating? See, at first it becomes very fascinating to manifest things, right? Until you realize that you have to maintain them, or they become like pests spiritually for you. Like, so anything that you don't completely nourish and take care of that you created will eventually come home to roost, if you may. So there'll be a time where you have created, like, think of a woman that has many kids, right? And all these kids, they're badasses, right? So she's going to have a lot of times to take a moment and contemplate, like, wow, all of these burdens, like, in me going forward with this process. But then it leaves nothing out in this decoding. It even tells you, so why are you going through this? It goes forward and says, the power manifested as a radiant light, right? So that's to push you back, like, yo, you're getting too burdened down. The power manifested as a radiant light guiding towards an ideal state or paradise, meaning that what you're being guided through, even naturally by higher self interacting with your median, is to still get you to a paradise, the most ideal state. But see, you would have to kind of see all of the states a little bit, right? Not necessarily the United States, right? So what are these states? States are different positions, right? So you would have to see all of these different states. And then you would get to this point where you realize, what is the most ideal state? And we each kind of have like our own perspective of that, but they're very close, right? Like happiness and, not even having to eat and be hungry or suffer and all those kind of things, right? So if you could get into something that would be like that, it would be a paradise. So that's what you're actually doing in your great work, okay? And it says the challenges were born with strength and authority, leading to an exalted state where the process and the outcomes were cultivated with reverence, okay? And this is just saying that this process of even going through a life, why it may seem, like sometimes you look at the reality, like, man, they take it a completely joke, but this is, this is like, it's a deep thing. Like, you will get challenged even by your own children, right? Like, you would get challenged by your own mother and father. You would get challenged by people who you help, right? The world will challenge you. You will become fearful at times. You will need courage at times, right? So this is all great challenges, but they're cultivated with reverence, because at the end of the day, it's the basic principle that when things are not hard, you don't really get stronger. It doesn't mean that things need to be hard continuously, but it means that when we go work out, we lift heavier weight. So we're kind of doing it then just to get stronger. And this also should let you know, as it concludes, finally, the blessings of this journey were realized, right? Mm-hmm. And the ultimate power was recognized and revered as the source and the sustainer of all, which is you. This means that if everything goes properly with the labors, because that's the farmer holding the plow, the worker, the wheel, like with these labors in this vineyard, right? This is not about an agriculture or God. This is about you sojourning through physicality. If everything goes well, then you'll come to realize that you are actually the source and sustainer of everything, that there is no separation between you and it. There's no other one. And that's the complete work. Okay. So this code, which you will see on the Vatican sitting on the one of the pillars and other palindromes, this is the only four-sided palindrome that exists. It's very difficult to do. It's like the mathematical miracles of the Quran, etc. Mm-hmm. And again, the decoding shows that is actually the explanation of the great labors that you will go through in this existence, and actually what is your goal and why you're even going through that many things, and the most important thing is what you're using, i.e. the plow. Right? Because the plows are the planets. And this is the big thing to understand here. When we start talking about drawing down the power of the stars, how they used to show this is there was the rider, which is you, and then there were 7 horses or manes, they were called. 7 horses or manes of power. And you would basically use these 7 horses, if you may, to power your way through or to move through realities, right? So you would see each of these elements or spokes on this wheel as a certain power that can be used specifically for certain things. And then you would utilize or resonate with that power. That's how you utilize that power. You resonate with that power. You resonate with bringing in all the elements that or any of the elements that correspond to that power. First, if you needed to get familiar with that power, meaning that each of these powers, which, we'll show towards the end of the build today, but each of these powers have specific correspondences. They have a flower, they have a tree, they have an insect, they have an animal, often multiple of these. But there will be characteristics within those things, just like our ancestors are showing in their deep knowledge. There'll be characteristics of those things in those sets that are the same across all of them. And what this allowed you to be able to do is, no matter where you were, even if you were locked somewhere in a cell, you can summon the power of the star, because somewhere there would be something that can resonate that power. You can pull it out of stardust, as you were saying, but there would still be, like, it could be growing in the window, the power that needs to be amplified in order for you to remove yourself from whatever situation that you're in, or to manipulate that situation to go in the way that you feel will allow you to continue your journey, right? One word that you can spell from this is tarot, right? It doesn't appear here as a word, but you can spell tarot with this, because tarot means a wheel, right? Because the tarot cards are a wheel. You also notice tenets here, right? Which is how to move back and forward through time. The principles of how to move back and forward through time, right? Which is, Denzel Washington's son's movie, right? Tenet, right? They moving through back and forward through time, right? So now notice how in this game, that's how if they can switch the game up and they can control the narratives, then they will add like more pieces and cheat, right? So in this case, the Trump or the Joker, and when this was a whole show, I think we talked about this a little bit here, but the Joker takes up 6 cards in the deck, okay? Not only is it the Trumps, as you know as the new hijack to the White House or whatever, right? But it's also the cards. No other card has this position or has this many cards. And then if you notice it's a position, Jack plays right next to the Queen and the King. You see what I mean? If Jack can eliminate the Queen and the King, Ace is only a number 1, so it can make itself the highest card. So these are like codes in the matrix where you will understand that certain cards, even J as a letter, you know what I mean? You start noticing J is a hook, right? And in a lot of different things, like, you know, from J to Z, you're going to get a J in the front because like there's a lot of Jameses in the development of even America, right? Like it's like 60% are named James. You see what I mean? So you start noticing James means the son of fire. Mes means the sons of, and Ja is fire. Same word with Sonya, right? It's backwards. Jason. Same word with Jason, right? So all those, Jason, Sonya, James, Jacob, Diego, Yakub, all those are all of the same name. So you start understanding, oh, the language is the game. But then remember, you got masters of the game. And this is where, you know, like I said, like if we're left to our own vices based on the things that are going on right now, meaning that we don't have any blueprints, we will continue to get lots of people elaborating on the game, but because the game is really sophisticated and goes by specific rules, person may not actually, they may have part of it. Like, for instance, what I'm showing here is that, remember how a language is stored in a certain part of the brain, okay? So in that way, language is like a world. So when you go to this world even that you're speaking English in, and the worlds that you speak English in the dreams, this is where that world is. And this is the encoding to that world. And this is the symbolism around this world. Like on the top left, directly below, that's the monogram of English and the Futhark runes, because English is Futhark runes. And any symbol in English or number can be mapped out on that specific symbol. Okay? And so what you have then is in the mind is you have a rolling code or a rolling cube, almost like a Hellraiser.
Right.
And it's only because here's what happens. If you don't figure out time, because Saturn's the slowest mover, so that's why they always show Saturn at the end. All right. And it's that the words, and we're going to say the words specifically here, are the course, the cycle. Let me get my final word. Give me 1 second here. And these are the words related to time. You have the courses. These are just the 3 ones we're going to use today. The courses, the hours, and the cycles. Okay. And so all we're talking about is courses are, going around something. Right? Generally, we even call, like when we're learning something, a course. Hey, he's got a few courses he's selling. Okay. It means to wear a groove into something. So everything that we've talked about today with wheels and patterns, time, it all evokes the same vision of courses and something that is even spinning around something, right? Consistently. Like we talked about the center. And then we have hours because time is a big factor here. Time is inferior to the sun. And let me just explain that real quick. When we measure the powers of the hour, we measure them by when the sun comes up. We don't measure them by what time of the day it is. Okay? But the reality is that because people use time to measure their day, they are on an inferior system. So they're under the power in that way of Saturn, which is replete, what I'm saying, because if you don't know how to control time, then time will for sure control you. You won't be able to slow it down or speed it up or do any of that. So in that way, you're under, in that tense or context, you're under the power of Saturn. Versus those who know how to control time, they use the sun, because the only way to line up all the elements, if you may, is to base it on when the sun rises inside of your territory. Okay? So just follow me on this. So the hours are very important because these are the intervals that mark the segments of the energy's division. Because to make this fair, each energy appears the energy appears at its designated time. So when the world was divided into these 7 parts, if you may, time was divided into these 7 parts. Each of the part gets its specific time and gets its specific hour. Okay, so we have the hour, and then we have cycles, right? Which, they talk about Bhaktans, Kali Yugas, or how long does it take for us to get complete, for the sky to make a complete turn, right? Because this is all about cycles. So now what I'm connecting you to is I'm showing you, hey, there's patterns here, there's languages here, there's things on the periodic table, there's DNA. So I've left out nothing that it takes to create a reality. I actually gave you a little bit more of stuff that it takes to create actualities and other realms and dimensions, right? So we have enough to create worlds with courses, hours, and cycles.
A7, what's your opinion about daylight savings time?
Well, I live on the equator, okay? So I'm in Costa Rica still, right? And there's Ecuador right here. So we never have a daylight savings time because daylight savings time is a byproduct of trying to line time back up based on being on a pole and them still trying to put numbers to designate what time of the day it is versus each person just using when the sun rises as being their first hour, which an occultist has to do. Because the first hour is always ruled by the archetype of that day. And you need, this is something that that's why they call it a practice, because practice makes perfect. And once you know this, you feel it. It's not like you even know, oh, shoot, we hitting tomorrow. And eventually you stop even thinking about it because your subconscious mind is really, way more powerful to control these kind of elements. Okay. But just to clarify, those words, courses, hours, and cycles are also the root to the words curses, right? So courses and curses sound pretty similar. Why? It's because in this process, like a course is also a journey, like, hey, get on that course, the obstacle course, okay? So on the journey, you're going to entwine with many things. That's why we're all in different reality. We all have a different reality. We're sharing this reality.
Right.
We're sharing the earth and all this, right? So we're weaving in together like a tapestry, okay? But what happens if you weave in with some elementals that their formulas are all screwed up, okay? This is what we would call diseases and hereditary problems, debts, and being defaced, dismembered. All those different kind of things are products of curses. That's what curses really are. So the only way to actually really remove curses is to actually know how to move time around, because a person who can do this actually moves through what you call the dream realm and redoes certain things that they may have done not only in the past on this earth, but also in other places, and then benefits in the present as if they never made that decision, and now they're in the condition of never making that decision. You get where I'm coming from? So this is how time manipulation works. Just very clearly, you move actually through time, generally within the sleep, what you call the dream world, because the cogs are different. It's easier to move through the dream world and get things happening here. This is a slow cog. So you could set up stuff in the dream world and then it'll manifest here in like 3 months. But if you ever wanted to like really work with time for healing, you basically go back to when certain things happen and you change what happened then. And then you arrive back into the present and you feel like what it would be like if that never had happened that way. Right. Okay, so that's how you're doing this internal work. So to remove yourself from curses, you need to master time. Also the horrors, okay? This is about the hours or the seasons. And, this is something you notice about technology has gotten a decent amount of control over things. And, we kind of know where to set up cities and where not to. But if you ever been someplace and a natural disaster comes through, like a tornado or a strong storm, you realize right away that things could get really ugly and bad and horrific. Okay, so just in conclusion, the seasons do bring about sometimes conditions in which that are terrible to those who are not able to remove themselves from it, right? So that's where horror and hour connect. And then the last one is the cycle, or the cycles. The cycles are also the psycho. This is the same word, PSY, like crazy, okay? Because you'll also notice people who do practice magic, they can get a little crazy when it's not working out the proper way, like, because they get all scrambled, right? And then in that process, they actually do go cycle. They actually kind of pin themselves to the moon. They never really make it beyond that first ladder. And then it just starts to really just subconsciously take toll on their minds. And because they can't escape that pattern or that field or that orbit, they then literally get demented in a certain way, right? So in this lesson, there's like somebody at the end that's saying, okay, look, we're all running this race, right? But then there's somebody that's running it slower than everybody. And if that happens to catch up with you, you will die, okay? But it's not like the death in like, oh, you know, Johnny's gone, but it's the death as it will cut you right in two. That's what the scythe is for. It will divide you from this reality and then split the energy and put you, part of you in one reality and part of you in the next reality. You see what I mean? So this is the process again, and that's the ultimate toll that you pay if you don't master time, right?
All right. So Terrence, oh no, go ahead. I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's what we're talking about. This is the opus then on, why are these powers important? Because Saturn is the slowest moving planet. So to beat the slowest in the game, Saturn's metal is lead for a reason. Like it's, you know what I mean? So it's very encouraging in a way to understand also when a person is moving on a Saturn path, right? They have a tendency to be dealing with lots of drama early in life. But if they can hold through all of life, like they're the most stable, they're the most financially sound, they're the ones who run the whole company. But, if they can make it to that part of the journey, and that's why, when you know your path already, it's easier to optimize. It's easier for you to resonate. It's easier for you to stand completely in your power and work from that angle or that demand, if you may. Because, you need to now study more about what are your yins and your yangs, your strengths and your weaknesses and how to utilize them. But this gives you a hard-coded way. And as I said, it's written in the stars. And they did this because, I can't say it's even like who is they that did it. But this is so that when you come into the knowledge, you won't have to really wonder in that way. Like they'd be like, looking at the stars and they ain't wonder. You will actually be accurate with your sciences and what you feel is actually happening in the reality and where that energy is coming from.